Hello again, and welcome to our book study on Get Over Yourself by Romy Neustadt. Today we're going to be talking about chapters 10 and 11. 10 is super short and yet still packed a punch. What were some of your takeaways from chapter 10, The Key to Duplication?
I think if you only read one paragraph in this entire book, it should be, I want you to ask yourself a very simple but important question. If everyone on your team did exactly what you currently do every day, every week, and every month, how big would your business be? The end. We could just stop now. Like, that's a pretty, I think that I'm going to write that on a Post-it and stick it to my computer somewhere, because that is a really great reminder.
Yes.
She talks about, the people on your team are going to do about half of what you do. I find that I have found that to be true, even when we were in full momentum and adding 100 people a month and really growing like gangbusters. I still felt as if people were doing about half of what I was doing.
Right. So yeah,
half of nothing is a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so I made a note on my little cheat sheet that, because the ding that went off in my head when I read that about your people will do on average half of what you do. The little ping was, so we need several people doing half of what we do.
It works out when you have about 10 people doing half of what you do, your team explodes, because then that's 5 times as much as what you can do alone. Right. Just by the numbers. If you can have 10 people doing what you're doing, you're explosive.
Yep. So yeah, that was one thing I wrote down as a takeaway for me, was the half rule, that realization that team is probably only going to do half of what you do, and the half of nothing is pretty powerful in a negative way. Yeah. And I knew this as a teacher from page 140, that third paragraph down: we can teach, we can coach, we can inspire, we can collaborate, we can laugh, we can have fun together, we can dream, we can plan, but we can't motivate. And that's so true. Like I said, I know that from being a teacher. You can't motivate students. That has to come from within. And if they don't care, they don't care. And it's the same with people in our business. You can't motivate somebody else. The only person you can motivate is yourself.
And if we can't motivate us, what makes us think we're going to motivate our team?
I think something that is, my thoughts on that are going back to a much earlier chapter, and that is our job of helping people find their why, because that is what will motivate them. And then also being super duper aware that nobody is always motivated. And that's where consistency steps in, of like
discipline.
I don't feel like it, but this is what I've committed to do every day. And it's the consistency that's our habits. It's our, what are we going to do? I didn't feel like jogging today. So I was like, but it's what I have created in my head over the last 2 months of jogging almost every day, of like, all right, well, you just, even if I just go for 2 miles, I did it. Right. And I think if we can get in the habit of, well, at least I need to reach out to 3 people. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the consistency, because motivation is going to come and go. That is just human nature. Like
Yes.
And especially as women, and we will have teams of women, our cycle, there are people that study women's cycles, and they suggest you study your own, because whatever yours is, it is going to be irregular. You will have times of the month where you don't feel like doing anything. And if you can work that into your schedule, and hey, on the weeks that the days where I'm on my cycle, like, or not, and I have more energy, I do more those days. And then that gives me permission to do a little less on those days when I probably shouldn't talk to humans. Do you know what I mean? Like, and working that into being aware of how you are, being aware of the time of day that you work better.
Yes.
If you're not a morning person, don't fill out on your planner that you're going to work your Plexus business from 8 to 10 a.m. if you don't wake up till 10:15. Right?
Right.
So awareness and consistency is so huge. And then I think helping, as you build your team, your women be aware of that so that they don't feel like failures.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. And an important conversation to have, even though I'm past the point of having cycles, except that the biological cycle still kind of exists despite the absence of Shark Week.
Yeah, well, I think everybody has different beliefs, but my mom will always, like, if she's extra grumpy, she's never attributed it to her cycle. It's always because it's a full moon. I don't, whatever. The thing is as humans, our month does this.
Mm-hmm.
Look, did you just see that?
Yep. That's because you went like this.
This is so cool.
I think there is something to the moon thing, and it's not superstitious or supernatural or whatever. It's gravity. If the moon can affect the tides,
Yeah, it's a pull.
it can affect the body and the water in your body.
Yeah, I mean, my aunt was a ER charge nurse for 25 years, and she would tell you
know it. Yes,
that
absolutely.
those are the worst shifts to work. So
yeah, it's not fun in high school either. And there were times that I wouldn't be in the front of my brain aware that it was a full moon, but the day would just be crazy psycho. And then I'd say something about, is it a full moon? And sure enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
anytime I've ever said that and I look, I'm like, it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I've said that, is it a full moon? I look and I'm like, totally is. Yeah. People have lost their mind.
Yep. So it's valid. It's not psychobabble.
Page 139 is really powerful and something I have always taken to heart ever since I read this the first time. But second or third paragraph at the top where it says, that's why to build big, you must commit today to be the top producer on your team. I have always tried to out recruit anybody on my team, and it's not a pride thing. It's more of a to show them I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And if I can do it, you can do it, you know?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I do think that that's pretty powerful. If you're setting an example and you want to be seen as a leader, do the stuff, win the stuff, recruit the people. That's what leaders do. People will look up to you if they look every week and your name is on every week. People are going to be like, oh, maybe I should listen to what she has to say because she's doing something right.
Yeah. When at the bottom of page 139, as a follow-up to that, where she says, here's what I tell them. If someone isn't reaching out and talking, you want to try and find out why. This is when in training your newbies, if the person, you're trying to coach them and they're not doing the reach outs, to try and figure out why and really have their best interests at heart. So here again, she gives us what could be a good jumping off place for developing our own authentic script for starting that conversation. I'm sorry, somebody has to rearrange. Hold, please. Okay, are you better now? Poor Lola, afraid of the washing machine. Okay, Lisa, I remember you told me desperately you want to get out of teaching because you're so tired of the pink slips. You'd rather spend more time with your kids than with everybody else's children, etc. But she says to her, it's not going to fall from the sky. And what I have said to people is fish don't jump in the boat.
Yeah.
You can't just go out there, because I have one gal, she has joined my team more than once and seems to think that people are, if she just puts it out there that she represents Plexus, that people are just going to flock to her. And the second time she joined, I told her, I said, I think this was part of the problem, is this was your approach before, and fish aren't going to jump in the boat. You have to do some work. Well, but then her definition of work was designing t-shirt transfers. It's like, no, that's not going to get you people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I wrote in the margin just my own version of, it's not going to fall from the sky, the fact that fish don't jump in the boat.
Yeah, I'm known for saying the FedEx man is not going to knock on your door and ask to buy Plexus.
That's true.
So
Although, those
go up.
the front porch signs that some people have where they say, we know who we're voting for. We've already found Jesus. So unless you're selling Thin Mints, please don't knock.
I haven't seen that.
Go away. And it's variations of that, but
Yeah.
I've thought about, unless you're here to buy Plexus, don't knock.
I like it.
So, anyway, so that was a really powerful chapter in just a very few pages. Are we ready to move on to chapter 11? Because
yes,
chapter 11 is the one that stepped all over my toes.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I have to put my chapter 10 cheat sheet back in the book. Otherwise they get lost. Okay, well, one, I discovered this morning, this was the first time I'd read chapter 11, because when I did a book study of this book previously, it got derailed and I never finished the book. So today was the first day I read chapter 11, and boy, she has got my number, and not in a good way.
Well, I think she has everybody's number. That's why this chapter is really huge.
Yeah, it is. So the title, the title of the chapter says it all. But she starts off talking about, hopefully by now you know how to handle objections, prospects objections, but there are other objections, and they're the ones we throw at ourselves. And it's so true. Number one being, I don't have time for this. And, for me, that's an ouch, because it's not that I don't have time for it. Christy, you and I have had this conversation. I've got time. But then she says 2 lines later, I haven't made it a priority. And that really is the problem. And that's where I wrote ouch in the margin. That really is the problem, is I haven't made it a priority. So, and we find time for what's important to us. I don't forget to eat. Sometimes, but not for days and days and days. I might forget to eat all day, but then by dinner time, I'm ravenous. I don't forget to do the laundry. I don't forget to do the grocery shopping. you know, so we do prioritize what's
Yeah, I'm gonna
important
bring
to
it home
us.
and just check on with the shoe.
Let me mute her.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, you know,
So-
and I think that it really is to admit to yourself it's not a priority is not congruent with what you're saying of I want to earn leaders retreat. I want to walk the stage. It's not a priority. Like, which of those are you going to make true? You get to decide, but sometimes it's
Right.
that really being true and honest of I'm not making it a priority is enough to be like, and knowing your why should push you back
right.
if
And
you let it.
telling myself that fish are not going to jump in the boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and yeah, I put on my list for today, you know, one of those other things I haven't made a priority is today I'm going to find a therapist and I'm going to schedule an appointment
Good.
because from this chapter, it just brought all that up again. It's the stuff I got told. It's the stuff I tell myself, you know, well, the stuff I got told that therefore in my brain made it true about
Mhm.
not being worthy, being lazy, etc. So anyway, that's on my list. I'm going to do that today,
Good.
among other things. But it's on the list. Written down on the list, not just
Is it at the top or the bottom?
Um, well, it is at the bottom because of when it occurred to me. There were other things that came to me, but it is going to be a priority today. So I had already, you know, I need to text this person about subs that ran under her, and I had a conversation with a sideline yesterday that said, this is what I'm doing. Maybe you want to do that. And I said, yeah, sounds like a good idea, but did I do it? No. So I've put that on my list. Another level one that I need to talk to about a variety of things, not just the business, but anyway, and then find a therapist. So it was, but the whole list came out of preparing for book study this morning.
Good.
So, on page 145, she mentions, and this took me back to other coaching that I've heard, that as humans, we'll do anything and everything to avoid the hard stuff.
Yes.
And again, that's our brain keeping us safe. You know, we're programmed to expend the least amount of energy, not be uncomfortable, not make ourselves vulnerable. And all of those things are things that we need to do in order to build this business,
Mhm.
that we have to get out of our comfort zone. You know, we have to be vulnerable. And those are
Yeah.
hard things to do.
Mhm.
And so acknowledge the hard, but do it anyway.
Well, in the gray
Thank you,
box
brain,
on
for
the
keeping me
side,
safe.
yeah, in the gray box on the side, you know, why do we not want to do those things? Because it's hard, but here's the thing, it's the hard stuff that's the most important. And
Exactly.
it's true, where I don't know where she says it, but where she talks about like if you only needed to talk to a few people and only needed to do a few things, there would be way more top earners in the company, right? It's the
Yeah,
quantity
that's
things.
that's the second excuse. I'm talking to enough
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
And so by the third excuse, I noticed that these excuses are kind of tiered.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one that comes up the most is, I don't have time. I don't have time. And so if you've gotten past that and you figured out how to make the time, you've prioritized it. It's not about making the time, it's about prioritizing the time. You can't make more time. Time just is. John Maxwell. But once you've gotten past that one about I don't have enough time, well, the next one is basically I'm doing enough. Well, no, you're not. If you're not growing the way you want to, you're not doing enough. So, and that's kind of all summed up in one sentence or two on page 149, where she says, if you're not adding business partners and customers, you're most likely not talking to enough people. So make sure you're actually talking to new people every damn day.
Yeah, I really, really loved where she talked about where she did a challenge with her team and like had everybody like double, they're normally like double their quantity. And where her person had her highest, best week ever. And she said, I didn't know I wasn't talking to enough people until I started talking to enough people. That's really good.
Yeah.
Really good,
Yes.
in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. I agree. That needs to be a poster on the wall.
Correct.
But if I put up all the posters, I wouldn't have any walls showing.
A wallpaper. Oh, it's like consider it wallpaper of quotes. We just start a
Yeah.
post-it wall.
So, also in this section of the chapter, she called the 5-3-2 method. And many years ago in Plexus, I remember at Super Saturday, the trainers talking about 3-2-1, which was the same thing. It was train
Correct.
3, follow up with 2. I'm sorry, it was reach out to 3, follow up with 2, train 1. And that's what this one is. Reach out to 5, follow up with 3, train 2.
Yeah.
So and that's a good simple way to get started. And then that expands then into the winning day, which actually goes back to the idea of prioritizing. There's a reason the winning day is written that you need to do those things in a certain order. And it prioritizes the reach outs. It's the planting the seeds, warming up the algorithm, and then reaching out and starting some conversations.
Right.
You have to do it in order, and you have to include all the ingredients or your brownies are not going to turn out.
Yep. In the right order.
Yep. So then the next thing after I've talked to enough people is I've recruited enough people, which I made a note there. Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as having recruited enough people? I wouldn't think so, because you're going to have attrition. You have to
Correct.
keep recruiting people. And, and hopefully you're funneling them in faster than they're trickling out the other end.
Yeah. And the bigger your team is, the more you lose every month. Because there's just more to lose.
So, but again, the tiers of these is first you got to deal with the excuse I don't have enough time. Then there's the excuse of I'm not talking to or thinking that you are talking to enough people. Then thinking that you've recruited enough people.
You know, she says in last paragraph before the next thing on page 150, I challenge you to commit to bring on 25 people in the next 6 months. That's what Plexus is challenging you to do for a month. 4 a month, retain 3, 4 a month. So this is only one extra. So one of the months you would add 5. Like this is exactly what we're being asked to do.
Right.
So,
well, and the recruit 4, retain 3 also feeds into the idea of your table having 4 legs.
Correct. And it is the going for gold. Bring 4 in, help 3 of them add 4. You go gold. All
right. So the next one then says, I'm being coachable, but nothing is happening. Well, and here again, for me, this was a no, because, okay, I take the coaching, but I'm still not doing the work. So that's not being coachable. That's being a sponge. You know, I
Yes.
soak up the information.
Mhm. You take lots of notes.
I take lots of notes,
You
but
show
if I
up
don't
to
do
the
anything
things.
with it, I'm just a sponge.
Yeah, I really like that analogy because you are a great example of someone who's showing up to all the things, you know, and that would be considered being coachable, except for the very last part of taking action on everything that you have soaked up.
Right. So, in reading this portion, I guess just the idea of I'm being coachable, but nothing is happening. What came to mind for me was from several years ago at convention. One of the quotes that I walked away with from convention was, the key to success is you have to dance until it rains. You know, a successful rain dancer, that's the key. Dance until it rains. And then you have a 100% success rate. You can't think, well, I've reached out to enough people and it's their fault that they're not getting back with me. If you're not getting the response, you haven't reached out to enough people. If your team's not growing, you haven't recruited enough people. You got to keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Yeah, one of the things when my team was in full momentum and we had a lot of workers, you know, and what I would share with them is that the number of people I need to reach out per day to sign a certain number of people may be different than yours. So my suggestion was learn your own ratio. And you do that by keeping track of everybody you've reached out to and how many you sign. You know, do that for 2-3 months where you're really closely monitoring how many people you send messages to and have then how many conversations that leads to, and then how many new joins that leads to, because what that does is give you, based on you, how many people you need to talk to a month to sign X number of people. You know, because my ratio and Deanna's ratio is significantly different. That woman is almost 1-to-1 in, if she's talking to you about Plexus, you're going to join. I don't know how she does it. Problem is she doesn't talk to anybody or post, but you know, my ratio is more 10-to-1. There were people on my team who, you know, I don't, because I can't control what comes out of your mouth or what your messages are. I can suggest a script, whatever, but it also will play into, what do people think of you? What type of influence do you have? Who are you in your community? There's a lot of other factors besides a script, right? And so there were people on my team where I knew they needed to talk to 20 or 30 people to get one. So I don't think that there's a magic number. I think you need to figure out, and it's math. It's just math, and it's just a number. And Emily Gibson would tell you, it's just a number. Don't be insulted that you need to talk to 30 people, or don't take it as negative as you need to talk to 30 people to sign one. It's just a number. And when you know your number, you become very efficient. Right? So that just, I think, is something to take into consideration, is that's measurable. That's a measurable thing, you know, and maybe you just have one notebook and it's separate from your note cards or whatever, just a spiral. You don't even have to write their name down, you know, just like tally marks of how many you've sent messages to. And then another column, conversation with, right? Like how many people are following up and you're able to have a conversation with them. And then the next column is joined. Is Lola reacting to my
Yes.
bananas? Okay. So just, if you are ready, and I think you are, to get into action, finding your number is very helpful. Just,
Yeah, and I've heard that before. I was on one of Emily's coaching calls one time when she talked about tracking how many messages you send, how many conversations you have, and how many people you sign up. So, okay. So bottom line, if you're 100% coachable, you'll be seeing success. So my sponge is
I've
about
never
saturated.
thought
I'm going to have to get in. Go ahead. Say that again.
I've never thought about the action connected with. I know you have to act. I don't have a challenge with that. But I've never thought about coachability includes action. Those are, we always hear, well, are you coachable? But the other end of that, it's never really brought up. And I'd also never thought about finding your number. That's a concept I'd never heard. I know it's a numbers game, but I'd never put it in to that way. So those are
Well, and the coaching thing, if you think about it, football coach, he gives you the coaching during practice all week. He expects you to put that into play at game time. So, I'm with you. I have been the same in the past where I'd never thought about that last piece of being coachable is now go do it. But when you boil it down, it makes sense. You're not going to win the game if you do the stuff in practice, but then you go out and try to play the game your own way.
yeah,
you
football
got to
game
get
is
out of
not,
your comfort zone.
yeah, the football game is not won on the whiteboard.
Yes,
on the field.
exactly.
The whiteboard is necessary, but then you got to go on the field on Friday night or Saturday or Sunday.
Yep. So, I've got a runner, and we have to remind ourselves that this is the bullshit we tell ourselves chapter. And so thinking that we've got a runner, very often we don't. I think it's wishful thinking on our parts is we maybe we have someone who we think shows potential and we decide that this person is going to be our runner. Well, like she says, and she says it drives her crazy. And it screws with our heads because when we think that that person's going to be our runner, we let off the throttle on our end and start trying to coach them and spend all our time coaching them. And we've let off the throttle over here and we're not still, continuing to talk to people, reach out, talk to people and add people. So, she says, well, a couple things. She clarifies what a runner is, for one thing. That a runner is someone who follows the system to the letter, who reaches out to new people all the time, brings you multiple 3-ways every week, who adds new business partners every single month. That's a runner. Okay. And in the following paragraph, she says you must routinely take inventory of what you have in order to know how far you have to go to reach your goals. Which that's why we need to be checking our back office daily to see where our points are so that we know how many points we still need by the end of the month in order to reach our goal. So, and some of those people that we think are en fuego, as she says, on fire, they're not really on fire. but we're focusing too much on them. On the next page, she refers to coaching as leading, dragging, carrying. And that's not truly coaching because she has coaching in quotation marks. But once you stop doing all the coaching, you'll have a whole bunch of time back on your plate to do your reach outs. And it goes back to, it's been said recently, but also said earlier in the book, 80% of your business should be your reach outs. 80% of your time should be spent on your reach outs. 20% on all the other stuff, the coaching and the back office stuff. So, a different way to think about that, maybe, Christy, correct me if I'm way out in left field. So you have somebody that you've spent 3 hours coaching 1 week. That means you need to have spent 15 hours doing reach outs and having conversation with people. Or, well, 12 hours.
Yeah. And I think one thing to, because it is really common when you think you have a runner to kind of pour all of your energy into them. I think if you can keep your mind on, again, like Angie said, the 4 legs on a table, that you would never want to just spend all your time on your one runner because you need 4. You need 4. I have one really strong leg. And when the people started to fall off of that leg, my whole everything was just crumbled, and spending a lot of time building other legs became critical. And I wished I had done it sooner, but I didn't know better. But I was spending my first 5 years, 6 years, I spent really all on that leg, pouring into them, training them, leading them, whatever. And every month I would be on the last day of the month, my points would be super high, but I'd be trying to hit what my outside leg points needed to be to hit Emerald, and that's something we don't talk about enough. I think it's not, we can say 1,500 points to hit Emerald. People don't remind you that you also have to have 375 points in your outside leg. Like, that's a lot of humans, not in your, what I mean? And I was, for my first year and a half of being Emerald, every month I was scraping the bottom of the barrel to hit 375 points. My 1,500 wasn't the issue. It was the other. And so then I kind of, the last 2 years, have done nothing but try to build my outside leg, because I didn't have 4 legs. I had 1. I had 1 and a gazillion customers that I would be calling on to try to get them to order. And so if you have a runner, think of it like it's a 4x100 relay, or 4x, your team should be a relay team. You need all 4 passing the baton perfectly, doing great to win the race. Maybe think of it like that. And then even if you do have somebody join you, that's great. You're like, okay, I got 1 lap done. Who would fit into this team wonderfully to continue? Having one great one, it's fantastic, but you really do. I can speak from experience. It will bite you in the ass if something happens to that leg. And then you're just like,
well, yeah, I mean, if you think of it in terms of, a 1-legged table can't stand. A 2-legged table can't stand. A 3-legged table can, but it's not as stable as a 4-legged table would be.
Yeah, it's really.
That's why the table analogy is good.
All day long. Yep.
Yeah. So on page 152, another one of the, BS things that we tell ourselves is, I can only sell products. And she says the real problem is that you're leading with products and not talking enough about the business, and that you need to get, at the end of that section, the important thing to figure out why it's uncomfortable for you to lead with the business. And that's what you need to work on. We've heard it said, I know I've heard it said, the thing you're avoiding is the thing you need to do the most. That's the thing that you're avoiding the strongest is the thing that's, you need to get to the bottom of why you're avoiding that. So again, got my list of things to do today. So the inescapable truth, you get what you ask for. If you don't ask them to join your business, they're not going to. They're not going to say, hey, I was thinking maybe I'd join you. I mean, someone might do that, but that person is rare. That person is rare. So, the next BS thing is, I don't need three-way calls. Okay, how arrogant is that, first of all? But the purpose of the real purpose of three-way calls is third-party validation. So yes, you learn from your upline, but it's third-party validation, because our friends don't tend to believe we know anything about anything. They're like, I know her. What is she? I know Angie. She's an English teacher. What does she know about nutrition and probiotics and gut health? She's an English teacher. So I bring in Christy, who's also not a doctor, but she can substantiate what I've had to say about the subject. So, that thing about friends not believing us, that's even biblical. That you're muted, Christy.
I was just agreeing with you. Yeah,
Okay. That
totally.
The prophet is not believed in his own land.
Mhm.
It's biblical. So, our friends think they know us, and they're going to say, what does she know? They respect us, they trust us, but they feel like they also know what we know and what we don't know.
Mhm.
So there's another excuse, I don't have the right network, which that kind of feeds into, I know one that I tell myself is, everybody on Facebook, all my Facebook friends have seen me posting about Plexus for years. They know I do it. If they wanted it, they'd let me know. No, that's not how it works.
People love an invite.
Yep.
They love an invitation to the table.
Yep. So, there was someplace in this chapter, she talked about how her team grew with tentacles all over the country, starting from small little Bozeman, Montana, where before long there were 4 of them driving Lexuses. I don't know, is the plural of Lexus Lexi?
I don't know what it is.
Anyway.
But yes, it's towards that end, 158 or 157.
Oh, it's later in the chapter.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's saturated. Okay. So after the biggies at the beginning of the chapter, the I don't have time. I think I'm talking to enough people. I think I've recruited enough people. These kind of get a little smaller and a little not quite so tiered as the initial chapters, but I mean, she did well because she hit the important ones first, the big ones first. These others might not apply across the board, although most of them do to me. Thinking I don't have the right network. I don't want to be that person who people run from. Well,
Mm.
if you're that person, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
So, and for the right people, you have a gift. You have something to offer. Do any of us know anyone who would not benefit from these products? Now,
Everybody needs them.
we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make them drink.
Mhm.
But we know they're all thirsty. We know if you've got guts, you'd benefit from Plexus. If you've got joints and skin and bones, you would benefit from Plexus.
But I think also, Angie, the majority of the book is based on business first and defaulting to the products.
True.
All I see in the grocery store are the prices going up. I mean, a box of cereal, $7. Who ever heard of that? And
Yeah.
so, that's where I'm seriously working a lot on my mindset. People, where are you going? Sorry, driving is very scary for work. Anyway, back to like, people need money.
Mhm.
That is the bottom line these days. And I
And
think
thank you
that
for saying that.
Plexus is very, very giving in their opportunity. I mean, to start literally a multi-million dollar business for $1 or $19, however, it is now.
Mhm.
And I, like a lot of you, I mean, minus Christy, because I know that she's spearheaded more of the business side, but I think as a whole that we have to just hold each other accountable and say, I've got to increase my numbers of people that I talk to about finances. And what if this opportunity could work for them?
Well, and you're absolutely right. And what you did, and I appreciate it, is you caught me in my standard thinking of leading with the products.
Exactly. And I love you for, I'm at fault too. Trust me. I'm at fault. I mean, I'm calling myself out also on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for bringing up the inflation thing, because I struggle with how to reach out about the business, and people needing additional streams of income is very relevant now. I hadn't connected those dots. So thank you.
Well, and the research that they've done, and I know we've talked about this before, and they've talked about it on the convention stage, but the threshold of what people are willing to join your network marketing company is $200. If you can help them earn $200 a month, they think that it's worth it. I think too often, sorry, there's alarms going off in the neighborhood, so Mello's going to go crazy. But the thought in some of people's heads is like, if I can't help them earn $2,000 a month, they're probably not going to do it. But all the research says if you can help them earn $200 a month or more, they'll be in. So it's huge. It's huge. It's like lower what you think people are expecting.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's it. That's because I thought about it earlier as I was reading the chapter, and like, yeah, you need to lead with the business. Why don't you lead with the business? And I think my excuse is The fact that I've been in it so long and I have yet to be as successful, I'm not where I feel like I should be by now. And I know you borrow other people's stories. I know what's possible, show them what's possible, even though I'm not there yet. But I was going somewhere with this train of thought. And I lost it. Shoot, I'm sorry.
While you're thinking of it, I will say on the flip side of that research, they also have shown that if you go too high, people won't even join you because they don't think it's possible. It's like you're making it up.
Okay, and that is where my train of thought was going, is that, like you said, we need to kind of lower our expectations or lower the threshold. I feel like I need to demonstrate diamond capability. And that's not the case either. The fact that $200 to $500 a month would be a huge difference for so many people. So that's kind of a big deal. Kind of profound. So after I don't want to work, I don't want to be that person. The next excuse is I don't want to work from appointment to appointment because I don't want to be pushy. And she says, that's not being pushy, it's being professional. And frankly, you keep your time more structured. She says, if you don't set appointments, you'll be chasing people, which is what I tend to do. And, my reason for, my excuse for not working from appointment to appointment is that I don't trust myself to be consistent enough to actually follow through on the appointments that I make. I have a lie that I've told myself for a long time, that I don't like routine. Because I heard that said about, I'm a Pisces, and I heard that said about Pisces at some point years ago. Pisces resist routine. I was like, yeah, that's me. And so I decided I resist routine. And decided to just embrace that idea. I resist routine.
How's that working for you?
It's not. It's not.
Yeah,
So
it'd be
I get
okay
more
to
done.
label.
So, and it's similar to what Genevieve says, in this book, the author calls it appointments. Genevieve calls them micro commitments.
Mhm.
You move them to the next micro commitment. You move them to the next chair in the row. Okay, move them to this chair, move them to this chair, until ultimately they get into the decision chair and they decide to join your team. So same thing, different language. The next excuse being, this should be easier. And what she says about that is that you're confusing simple with easy. And there is a difference between simple and easy. Our business is incredibly simple. Add 4, retain 3. Add 4, retain 3. Excuse you, be quiet. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Okay. But near the end of that section, she talks about a quote from, I don't know, TV star and philanthropist Mark Cuban, who knows a few things about being successful. He says, work like there is someone working 24 hours a day to take it away from you. Hadn't thought about it that way. Work like somebody's trying to take it away from you. Or, I think we've all had that person that we'd hoped they would be on our team someday, but we hadn't put the effort into making that happen. And then next thing you hear is they've either joined somebody else's team with our company or they've joined some other company. And you think, why? Why did you join that company? You should have joined me. Except you never asked them.
Or you only asked them once.
Or you,
I have
yeah,
somebody who's done some different network marketing companies, but the one that she was in closed down. And I reached out to her and, if you're ever interested, I'd love to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And her response was, all I've ever done is makeup. I'm not real comfortable with any kind of health stuff, whatever. And now it's been 2 years, but now she just joined a company that's like health and wellness. Well, I only asked her once and she said no, that she just does makeup. And somebody must have asked her more than once to do their health and wellness company, because now that's what she's doing.
mhm,
So, I saw that and I was like, huh. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Bad on me.
Another excuse, I don't have what it takes to be a leader. And that was the point. The note I made in the margin is I wrote, arg, this again. That you don't believe you have what it takes to lead, or that you don't deserve success. But that's when I put the other thing on my list off to the side. It's like, this keeps coming up. I've got to do something about it.
Do something, and my thing is, you'll be ready for it when it happens. If you have 2 or 3 people working on your team, you're going to be prepared to manage 2 or 3 people working on your team. You slowly evolve into somebody who has 300 people, 500 people on their team. And if you give up because you're like, I can't manage 300 people, well, you don't have to right now. You only need to manage 10, right?
Right.
You get better, and it just comes with experience, with doing it.
Mhm.
Nobody comes out of the womb being a Plexus Jewel, right?
Or a high school teacher,
Or a high
or a
school
good
teacher,
mom.
or an engineer, or anything.
Yeah.
You just, nobody should go out today if they've never jogged and sign up for a marathon for Saturday and think that they're going to run 26 miles. Like, maybe you could, but you're probably going to crash and burn. Like, you're going to hurt. It's going to be miserable, but first you run a mile, and then you run 2, and then you run 3. And that's, you taper up, and you will do the same thing with your Plexus team. You just slowly taper up. And you also, as your team grows, you will have people, just so you know, that you can really rely on to do things for your team. You get it in your head that you have to do all the things, but you don't, and you won't, not if you've led correctly and helped place people in leadership positions of what they're good at on your team. Like I say
yeah.
all the time, like, Deanna is the best cheerleader in the world. I was an actual cheerleader. I can do the motions, but as far as like picking people up over and over when they don't do the work, I'm not very good at that. I'm like, go to work, and so you will have people on your team that fill in different holes if you let them, and now all of a sudden you have a jewel team, and it's a beautiful conglomerate of people.
Yeah. So there's another quote on the next page. This is on page 156, that leadership is about influence. And Gina brought up influence a minute ago. Nothing more, nothing less. Leaders are agents of change that add value to those around them and make a positive impact in their organization. Good leaders inspire their followers to have confidence in them, but great leaders inspire their followers to have confidence in themselves. Lay down, please. Thank you. He's being squirmy, wormy in my lap here. Sorry for the distraction. She wants to lie lengthwise, and that pushes me too far from the desk. And now she's not comfortable because I won't let her do that. Okay, the next excuse in the chapter is I will make mistakes. Well, of course you will. We all do. We're human. Failure is simply indispensable to the entrepreneurial experience, she says on page 157. Nobody gets everything right every time, and it's how we learn from our mistakes that defines us. So that is one thing that I think I do well, is that when I make a mistake, I stop and think about why it happened and ask myself, what's the lesson in this? What am I supposed to learn from this experience? So, but even that comes from self-development training I had many years ago.
Yeah, you're either winning or learning,
Or both,
or both.
ideally both.
Correct.
So another, I think this is an excuse that comes up fairly often and probably could stand to have been closer to the front of the chapter, although, yeah, this is the one she ends with. So that's actually good structure. You start with some important ones, you go through some smaller stuff, and then you come back to something important, because they'll remember what you said at the beginning and what you said at the end, but what happens in the middle might get lost. So this is a biggie, that it's saturated where I live, or this biz just doesn't work in our town, or I don't have anyone near me to help me. And that's when she goes on to talk about, she started her business in the thriving metropolis of Bozeman, Montana, with a population of 39,000. But then she recruited a business builder, and they were a party of 2, and then they added someone else, and pretty soon they were a party of 10, and then 30, etc. And she goes on to describe the tentacles reaching all over. And so that's what I aspire to. But she says, there's plenty of room to grow since everyone has different networks and different spheres of influence. And so that kind of loops back to, and she didn't address this one in, well, I guess she kind of did. An excuse we often get is, I don't know enough people. Well, it's not just about who you know, but it's about who they know also. So I guess maybe she touched, I guess that could fall under, I don't have the right network, thinking you don't know enough people. But you don't have to know a lot of people. Because again, it's not just about who you know, it's about who they know as well. So,
You know, if you can help 5 people go gold, you'll be a ruby.
mhm.
So that's really just 5 people who know 20 people. Most people know 20 people.
Yep. And they don't even have to know 20. They only need to know 4.
Correct.
And those 4 need to know 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Any other
Go for
thoughts
gold.
on that chapter? Sorry, I'm getting a text message, and I am expecting my my bug people today.
You know, I think the very last sentence is really a great one to end on. And she says, we can get out of our own way and get on with the business of building our future and stepping into our greatness.
Yep. And the key to that is conquering the negative voices earlier in that paragraph. So, yeah, good talk today. Any other final thoughts? We have 2 chapters on board again for next week. Karma's a bitch if you are, and your time is worth $962 an hour. Chapters 12 and 13. 12 and 13 for next week. So we're winding down. We're getting to the end here. We should finish this up on September 11th. And I think, Christy, you had discussed we'll do 10x is better than 2x. Yep. Easier than 2x. 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah, this will be our next book. 10x
Okay.
is easier than 2x. We're going to take everything we learned here,
And 10x it.
10x it, which goes right along with what you learned today about just talking to more people.
Okay. And I think my bug guy is here. So on that
Thank
note,
you so much, ladies.
have a good week.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you. Y'all have a good week as well.
You too.